Family caregivers often find themselves faced with an assortment of legal issues, many of which can be difficult to navigate without assistance. In this conversation, we want to explore the legal issues that African American caregivers are grappling with. Just how are we to prepare ourselves to address the issues, and where should we turn for help? Joining me today to discuss legal implications for caregivers are...
Good afternoon. My name is Morris Overstrait. I serve as president of the Auxiliary to the National Medical Association. I also serve the citizens of Texas as a judge.
Hello, I am T. Diane Surgeon Esquire, representing Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, and our international president, Mrs. Mary Breaux Wright. I serve as the National Director of Elder Care.
Good afternoon. My name is Yvonne Hinkson, Esquire. I serve as the Grand Basileus of Lambda Kappa Mu Sorority Incorporated, a business and professional women's association.
Good afternoon. My name is Charlotte Williams. I serve as the Supreme Basileus of the National Sorority of Phi Delta Kappa, an organization of women in the field of education.
Good afternoon. I am Dreamer Lee Waldman, and I serve as the National President of Top Ladies of Distinction Incorporated.
We've all heard of the nightmares and the stories about families trying to deal with younger men or women trying to romance and scam of their loved ones, and the family squabbles that come up in court. What other legal issues that come up with family members are providing care would you like to talk to us about today?
I think probably one of the most important things that we can stress is that caregiving is very difficult, aging is costly, and preparation is important. And the earlier you start, the more likely you are going to be able to put together a plan that will allow you to use your assets, position your assets in such a way that you will be able to have a good quality, long life. There are documents that people need to put in place. It's difficult to get families and individuals to understand the importance of doing it, but it's very, very important to stick with it. I think sometimes people don't want to make estate plans. They don't want to make wills because you think that if you make a will, you're going to die. And the fact of the matter is, if you don't make one, you're still going to die. If you don't make your own estate plan, you're going to use the one that the state prepared. So you need to make these decisions and put things in place when you are competent, cognizant, and can make these decisions on your own.
So, Chief Diane, what are some of the documents that we should have in place?
Okay. One of the first documents I would say almost everyone would need would be a general power of attorney. In some states, it's called a durable power of attorney. It is vitally important. You would have the opportunity to name someone who would be able to take care of your general affairs, your financial affairs. And you can choose the person that you want. A lot of times people think it needs to be a child, and then they wonder, well, which one of my kids should do it? Should it be the oldest one, or should it be the one that, has some good sense? Well, it probably needs to be the person that you trust. It doesn't even have to be one of your children. But you need to name someone, maybe 2 or 3, so that you'll have someone that can take care of your affairs. You also need to have what's called a health care power of attorney. This is a document where you have indicated someone to speak on your behalf about your medical affairs and your mental health affairs if you are not able to speak for yourself. It's important. And a lot of times we just assume, especially spouses, they assume that, well, my husband can take care of that, or my wife can take care of that, or my children will be able to talk with the doctors and the hospitals. And that's not necessarily the case. In most instances, the medical community will look for these documents where you have indicated the person with whom they can talk. And if you've not done that, you may run into some difficulty and they may end up having to go to court to get a guardianship, and that can definitely be very costly. It's public, and you don't really want to do that. Another document, do you want me to continue talking?
Well, go ahead.
Well, another document would be a living will. That's very important because then you can say how you really wish to transition. I guess that's a good word. Some people don't want to be hooked up to anything. Some people may not want to have extraordinary measures taken to prolong their life. It's important to do a living will because you can decide what you want.
Speaking of transitioning, Yvonne, tell us about what you think legal implications are after one transitions or just before one transition. What you think should be in place?
Yeah, I'd really like to address that question based on personal experiences with my father. And you would think that as an attorney, we would have all of our ducks in a row. Very fortunately, we had a discussion with both of my parents early on, but as we said earlier here today, African Americans are very reluctant to have these discussions. So we got what we could get. My father was blessed with very good health up until the age of 97, when from Sunday to Wednesday, his health just plummeted. And he did have a do not resuscitate order. We did have the power of attorney, but the ways in which those documents help in the reality of a very emotional moment, it's very, very difficult. And even with the hospital staff, there was just a lot of sorting out to do. So my father was in a coma, which we didn't really know, and the hospital continued to provide care, examining him, testing him day after day. By the time I arrived to New York, my father no longer was responsive. Very fortunately, an outstanding hospice care doctor came and talked to me as the eldest child about what was happening with my father and the decisions that I would have to make. And I was able to go back to the discussions, which my father had also had with his primary care physician, and be able to make the decision that my father was to be made comfortable. But we try to engage in these documents. We try to make sure the documents are in place. It's just very, very important to know the limitations of each document. The do not resuscitate order does not mean do not care. It does not mean do not provide care. So it's only valuable in the moment that the loved one is having some type of a medical emergency. The advanced directives and living wills are instructions simply to your doctor or to the hospital. And you've got to go also from state to state and know the regulations and how they apply in your particular state.
So Charlotte, what do you think that we as African Americans are turning to for legal help?
Well, right now, I don't think we're doing enough. But what I have found in the last year, attending the 3 forums that I have participated in, the word is getting out there. And hearing you 2 years ago at this event, at the Black Women's Agenda Symposium, it made me begin to think more because I had just become my mother's caregiver. And while at this point I have not engaged the formal services of an attorney, I have been speaking with friends who are attorneys and speaking with individuals who work in the Department of Aging to talk about the things that I need to make sure we have in place. Conversations our parents don't want to have. My mother had a stroke in '96. She didn't want to discuss any of this, and we let it go. My husband lost his parents shortly thereafter and found themselves in the position of having to go through probate with the state to maintain their parents' homes and their property and his mother's business. And I decided then we're not going through this. But it really wasn't until 2013, coming to the forum, that I said, enough is enough. We're going to deal with this.
Dreamer, you were the facilitator in Chicago for the Chicago Forum, and we were talking about legal protections for the elderly. Can you tell me what you think would be a good thing for people to know as far as protections are concerned? I know they vary from state to state.
Well, one of the things that I think that is very important for us as African Americans is we have to be proactive. We have to make sure that within our families that we target these people because we're potential caregivers. At some point, each of us in this room will be taking care of somebody. So we need to target the people that we know that may need caregiving assistance in the future and make sure that all of those forms you talked about, they get filled out, they get completed, because those are very important. If those forms are not filled out, the caregiver will have a very hard time. And again, it's very important, and I'm going to give you an example of why it's very important. When my grandparents became ill, they chose the one person in the family that they thought would be the correct person to be their caregiver. This happened to be their favorite son. That happened to be the wrong person. They did not have they didn't have a will, they didn't have a durable power of attorney, they didn't have anything. And because of that, their accounts were looted. When they died, they did not have a penny.
Well, let's talk some, and anyone can jump in, about benefits for the caregiver and the legal ramifications of that. I mean, sometimes there may be other, siblings who may be jealous if they are somehow paying out money to that particular caregiver because they're offering the care. Will someone address those rights that the caregiver has?
Well, I might, but I want to first point out, all siblings are not created equal.
Absolutely.
Financially,
Absolutely.
emotionally, or psychologically. And so it's very important that the right person is chosen to do certain things. One of the benefits of some sort of court-ordered guardianship is that there is some sort of, overview of that person's actions. I recommend that as a last resort because it can be very expensive. But if you're a caregiver who is not related to the person that you're giving care for, then you might want to seek some sort of protection, some sort of bond, maybe, because someone related to the person you're giving care for may disagree with some of your decisions. Caregivers are not, from a legal standpoint, are not legally responsible to take care of the business of the person that they're giving care for. They're simply there to give care. Oftentimes there are accusations that are not founded about physical abuse, which could land you in the criminal justice system. Sometimes there are issues about monies missing, which could land you in civil court or the criminal justice system. And so, the caregiver really has to be very, very careful and has to be a very, very trustworthy individual. And I would always suggest that siblings and others who are concerned about the person receiving care pay attention.
So, again, we were talking about where do people turn for help for legal issues.
While it is costly to get an attorney, and I can just tell you it is costly to get an elder law attorney, it is worth it because they're the experts. They know what they're doing. If you're trying to position assets so that you can qualify for Medicaid or qualify for the veterans benefit, that needs to be done in a proper way. It needs to be done in a timely way so that you don't end up being penalized for transfers that that you could make. You have to know how to do the gifting and how to do it correctly. And elder law attorneys are trained to do that. And it also helps you to be able to have this good quality life because you are positioning your assets so that you can use them to benefit yourself, to take care of yourself. And I stress that because I think it's wonderful to have children and family members that will take care of you, and sorority members and church family members. It's great. But your children are not responsible for your care. your family members, your church, and the government, and gracious knows, the government is not responsible for your care. You're responsible for your care. So you need to plan for it yourself. And the earlier you start planning for it, putting money aside in the various tools and vehicles that can be used to help your investments to grow, and then position them in such a way that you will be able to use them over time is really the best advice that I think we can give. And so I think the value of what my sorority is doing, the value of what Black Women's Agenda is doing, is helping to educate our people.
And Gwen, what I like to add also is that through these forums, our organization has received a lot of feedback and a lot of requests for additional information. And so part of what we're planning to do, and I think I heard someone say it earlier, is offer many workshops and many sessions as part of our educational outreach to the community. And one thing that my husband and I did just before he retired, because we were thinking about my mother's situation, was tied into long-term health care so that our children would not have to do some of the things that we're finding ourselves having to figure out how to schedule to do. And not that we don't think our children will do it, but we don't want them to have to do it.
I think it's very important that we put it out there for everyone to learn as much as they can about the subject, about where to go for help, and what to do. I thank you all so much for joining us today. You've been a wonderful panel, and this has been a wonderful experience.